Chosen one, God has answered the rejection, but the answer may not look like applause, immediate vindication, or everyone who dismissed you suddenly returning with an explanation. It may begin with the quiet strength rising in your chest when you realize that rejection did not erase your calling. You have carried the ache of being overlooked into rooms where you smiled, worked, served, and pretended that the wound no longer mattered. Yet somewhere beneath the tiredness, a question has remained. If that door closed, why does the desire to rise keep returning? Your shoulders may still remember the weight of being excluded. Your hands may still hesitate before reaching for something new, and your mind may still replay words that made you feel replaceable. But rejection is not always a verdict about your worth. Sometimes it exposes the place where you have been waiting for people to authorize what God is teaching you to receive. If you sense that something in you is changing but cannot yet name the season, the call of the chosen. A 30-day journey can help you identify what this transition may be forming, understand why the waiting feels significant, and approach your next step with faith instead of confusion. It is designed to help you reflect on the season you are living without forcing a promise that has not been revealed, and to notice the difference between grief, preparation, closure, and renewed obedience. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. Do not rush past the discomfort you feel tonight, because the question beneath your pain may be the beginning of your clarity. You were rejected by someone or by a circumstance, but you were not abandoned by God. There are mornings when rejection appears before your feet touch the floor. You wake with a familiar pressure behind your ribs, reach for your phone, and notice the message that never came, the invitation that did not include you, or the opportunity that moved forward without your name. The room may be quiet, but your thoughts begin speaking loudly. You remember how carefully you prepared, how sincerely you showed up, and how quickly someone decided that what you carried was not needed. Then you move through the day with a strange contradiction. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Your body feels heavy while a small part of your spirit feels restless to stand. You answer ordinary questions, wash a cup, open your computer, and complete responsibilities while an invisible conversation continues inside you. One voice says, "Maybe I was never enough." Another voice, softer but steadier, asks whether this rejection has revealed a place where your identity became dependent on approval. The pain is real, and you do not need to insult yourself for feeling it. But the pain does not get to write the final meaning of what happened. God can meet you in the moment when your hands stop reaching backward and begin preparing to receive what is ahead. The message is not that every rejection was secretly pleasant, or that every closed door should be celebrated without grief. The message is that rejection can become a place of discernment when you bring it honestly before God. It can show you where you were shrinking to remain acceptable, where you were confusing access with assignment, and where you were calling delay a denial because you could not yet see another route. You may begin to recognize that rising does not mean becoming loud, hard, or eager to prove people wrong. Rising means recovering the ability to obey without waiting for the people who hurt you to applaud your obedience. It means receiving a new beginning with humility, examining your motives without condemning yourself, and allowing God to rebuild your confidence on something deeper than public approval. You can learn to distinguish a wounded impulse from a faithful direction. You can recognize when you need rest instead of immediate action, when you need a boundary instead of another explanation, and when you need to move forward even though your emotions have not caught up with your decision. The promise is not that every outcome will be easy. The promise is that rejection does not have to remain wasted pain. Picture yourself at the end of an ordinary workday, standing in the kitchen with one hand resting on the counter. The light outside has begun to fade. There are dishes near the sink, and your mind returns to the moment you were told no. Perhaps it was a relationship that ended without the conversation you deserved. Perhaps it was a position, a collaboration, an invitation, or a family decision that made you feel like an outsider. You had imagined yourself walking through that door, and now you are trying to understand why the hallway feels so empty. The first instinct is often to search for a way to reverse the decision. You draft a message, delete it, write another, and wonder whether a better explanation could change someone's mind. But there is a point when another explanation becomes another request to be chosen by the same place that already demonstrated its limits. Your breathing changes when you notice this. The room has not changed, yet something in you has. You are beginning to understand that standing up is not the same as forcing the old door open. It may mean turning toward the door you could not see while you were still pleading with the previous one. Waiting without understanding can exhaust the soul in a way that ordinary work cannot explain. You can endure a difficult season more steadily when you know what it is asking of you. But confusion makes every quiet day feel like evidence against you. You wonder whether you are waiting, being prepared, closing a cycle, being redirected, rebuilding, or simply avoiding a decision because fear has learned to sound spiritual. The absence of clear language can make you interpret every silence as abandonment, the call of the chosen. A 30-day journey offers a place to slow down and examine those distinctions, so you can understand the season you are living instead of reacting to every emotional change. Many readers who arrived feeling confused or tired of waiting said the material helped them understand their season more clearly, organize their prayers, or stop interpreting every silence as abandonment. You can use that clarity to notice what deserves patience, what requires closure, and what practical step can be taken without panic. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. Then return to this moment with the question of what rejection has been teaching you about where your trust has been placed. The answer may not arrive as a dramatic sign, but it can become clear through the pattern your life has been showing you. The first opposition after rejection is often not another person. It is the pressure to make a permanent conclusion from a temporary wound. You hear one no and translate it into "no one will ever choose me." You lose one opportunity and decide that your future has already been measured. Someone else receives what you wanted, and comparison begins presenting their progress as proof of your failure. This pressure creates false urgency. It tells you to respond immediately, explain yourself repeatedly, accept anything that resembles approval, or make a decision only to escape the feeling of being behind. Fear does not always shout. Sometimes it speaks through a list of reasonable arguments that keep you circling the same disappointment. It says you should lower your standards because you cannot afford another rejection. It says you should become cold before anyone can hurt you again. It says you should prove your value through exhaustion. But God does not need your panic to protect your purpose. You can pause before answering. You can grieve without surrendering your identity. You can allow a door to remain closed long enough to discover whether your desire was rooted in obedience or merely in the need to be validated. Consider Joseph, who was rejected by people close enough to know his name and still chose to treat his life as held by God. His story does not make betrayal harmless, and it does not turn confinement into an excuse for passivity. It shows that a person can be pushed aside by human decisions without becoming spiritually useless. Joseph had to live through places where his future was not visible, where his gifts were present but not celebrated, and where faithfulness looked ordinary. You may not be in a prison or a foreign land, but you know what it means to carry ability into a season that does not reward it immediately. You answer the email, complete the assignment, care for your home, and continue doing what is right while wondering whether anyone sees. Joseph's life reminds you that hidden faithfulness is still formation. The room that overlooks you may not be the room that defines you. There is a difference between being unseen and being unprepared. As you rise, you do not have to imitate Joseph's circumstances. You can imitate his refusal to let rejection become an excuse for bitterness. Let your ordinary decisions become evidence that your character is not controlled by the treatment you received. Ignoring the signal of rejection does not always look rebellious. Sometimes it looks like repeating the same cycle with a new face, a new workplace, or a new opportunity. You keep entering relationships where you must earn basic respect. You keep accepting environments that celebrate your usefulness but neglect your humanity. You keep explaining your value to people who have already decided to benefit from your insecurity. Then when the same pain returns, you call it bad luck, because it is difficult to admit that familiarity has become a kind of shelter. The cost is not only disappointment. It is the gradual loss of peace, the habit of doubting your own perception, and the delay of obedience while you wait for someone else to apologize. Rejection can reveal a pattern you would rather avoid. It can show that you have been asking a closed place to become generous because you were afraid to discover what life would require outside it. You do not need to condemn yourself for having stayed. You need enough mercy to tell the truth about what staying has been costing. Once the truth is named, your next decision can become cleaner, quieter, and less dependent on the reaction of those who could not recognize what you carried. God has answered the rejection, but the answer is not a demand that you become obsessed with proving the rejection wrong. The answer may be the recovery of your ability to stand without an audience. You are not rising to make the people who dismissed you uncomfortable. You are rising because remaining on the floor of their opinion has become too expensive. Let this be a simple confirmation. Type the words 888 in the comments, then return to the message. Let the repeated words represent a threshold of attention, not a prediction or a secret code controlling your future. The important thing is not the number itself, but the honest recognition that you are ready to stop treating one rejection as the complete definition of your life. When you rise, you may still feel sorrow in your knees and uncertainty in your hands. Strength does not require the absence of trembling. It requires that trembling no longer make every decision for you. The new thing may begin with a boundary, a conversation you no longer chase, a habit you release, or a responsibility you accept with greater dignity. Receive the lesson without worshipping the wound. The conflict is also internal, because rejection often leaves behind an agreement you never intended to make. Somewhere in the pain, you may have agreed that being chosen by certain people would prove your worth. You may have decided that approval must come before movement, that certainty must come before obedience, or that a new beginning is only safe when nobody can criticize it. These agreements remain active even after the original person leaves. They influence how you speak, what you attempt, whom you trust, and how quickly you abandon an idea when it receives resistance. You can appear calm while still negotiating with an old sentence. I must be wanted first. I must explain everything. I cannot risk being misunderstood. The root is not weakness. It is the understandable desire to avoid feeling that pain again. But protection can become confinement when it prevents you from receiving anything unfamiliar. God is not shaming you for the place where rejection affected you. He is inviting you to examine it gently enough that you can stop building your future around avoiding one past experience. The new beginning requires more than enthusiasm. It requires the release of an identity that was shaped by someone else's refusal. Recognition alone is not enough when you know what hurts, but do not know how to respond tomorrow morning. The call of the chosen. A 30-day journey can serve as a practical companion while you reflect, pray, examine your decisions, and identify the next faithful step without allowing panic to lead you. When rejection has made every option feel equally dangerous, guided reflection can help you separate fear from direction and passivity from patience. You can return to the material when a new season begins, using its perspective to organize your thoughts before you answer, leave, accept, or rebuild. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. Then let the next part of this message move you from recognition into practice, because understanding the wound is only the beginning of learning how to walk differently. Your life does not need another performance of confidence. It needs an honest response that matches what you now understand. A faithful step can be small and still be real. Your mind, your body, and your spiritual recognition may not speak at the same speed. Your mind may understand that a rejection was necessary while your body still tightens whenever the subject appears. Your shoulders may rise, your stomach may turn, and your hands may reach for the phone before your wiser judgment has finished speaking. These reactions do not automatically reveal God's will, but neither do they need to be ignored. They are information about what the experience touched. Your reasoning can examine facts, patterns, timing, and responsibility. Your body can reveal where fear has become habitual. Your spiritual recognition can ask whether a decision produces greater honesty, humility, courage, and peace over time. None of these should be isolated from the others. A thought can be clever and still be fear-driven. A strong emotion can be sincere and still need patience. A peaceful impression can be meaningful and still require practical confirmation. This is why rising should not be confused with rushing. You can breathe, write down what happened, name what is known, and separate it from what you are assuming. In that space, rejection becomes less like a command and more like a question, asking what must now be healed, released, or responsibly pursued. The people around you may not all understand the transition taking place inside you. Some may prefer the version of you who accepted every invitation, explained every boundary, and remained available to prove that you were not difficult. Others may be accustomed to your silence because it made their comfort easier. Discernment does not require you to become suspicious of everyone, but it does require you to notice how environments respond when you become honest. A healthy relationship can survive a respectful no. A healthy workplace can receive a question without punishing your dignity. A healthy community does not need you to remain confused so that others can feel powerful. When you begin to rise, do not measure every person by whether they celebrate your change. Measure the relationship by whether truth, responsibility, and mutual respect are allowed to exist there. You can love people without giving them authority over every decision. You can forgive without reopening access. You can remain kind without returning to the same pattern that emptied you. The new thing God may be leading you toward will need room, and room sometimes appears when you stop filling every silence with explanations designed to keep others comfortable. Opposition often works through noise rather than open resistance. It fills your calendar with lesser urgencies until you have no attention left for the truth you already recognize. It keeps you tired enough to confuse relief with direction. It places another comparison in front of you each time you begin to recover, then makes someone else's visible progress seem more important than your hidden work. Delay becomes dangerous when it turns into endless postponement of the conversation, the boundary, the application, the rest, or the beginning that you know requires attention. You may say you are waiting for a perfect sign when you are actually waiting to feel invulnerable. You may say you are protecting your peace when you are avoiding a necessary act of courage. The answer is not to distrust every pause. Some pauses are mercy. The answer is to ask what your pause is producing. Is it clearer judgment or only more speculation? Is it deeper prayer or only more fear? Is it responsible preparation or another way to remain attached to the approval that rejected you? These questions do not accuse you. They return your attention to the place where freedom becomes possible. There comes a moment when you stop negotiating with the truth connected to this rejection. You may not know every detail of what comes next, but you know what cannot continue. You know that shrinking has become dishonest. You know that chasing an explanation from someone unwilling to offer one is draining the strength you need for your own obedience. You know that the desire to rise is not simply anger, because anger wants witnesses, while your deeper conviction is becoming quiet. At this turning point, you do not need to announce a dramatic transformation. You can make one clean decision and let it speak through your schedule, your words, and your boundaries. You can stop checking for a message that has already communicated its absence. You can remove one habit that keeps reopening the wound. You can begin the work you delayed because you were waiting for permission from an unavailable person. The new thing may feel unfamiliar because it is not built around defending the old thing. Let that unfamiliarity remain. You are not required to call it easy in order to call it right. Sometimes the first evidence of rising is simply that you no longer volunteer to remain where your dignity is continually negotiated. Imagine a seed beneath the soil, not as a promise that every hidden season ends in the result you desire, but as an image of work that cannot be judged by what the surface displays. A seed does not become visible by arguing with the darkness. It receives what is necessary, breaks open in its own time, and develops where no applause can reach it. In the same way, rejection may have placed you in a hidden interval where your identity is being separated from public selection. The soil is not a verdict. It is a place where old coverings loosen and new strength begins without performance. You may feel buried because the familiar evidence of progress has disappeared. Your name is not being called, your work is not being recognized, and your previous route no longer offers reassurance. Yet hiddenness can expose whether you want the purpose itself or only the recognition attached to it. Beneath the surface, roots do not compete for attention. They establish contact, stability, and direction. This is the first movement of your rising, not appearance, but formation. Before you stand where others can see you, you may need to become steady where only God can see. Inside that hidden ground, the seed is not inactive. It is receiving pressure, moisture, warmth, and time in ways that cannot be measured by a quick glance. Your own formation may look like learning to say no without anger, completing work without praise, resting without guilt, and praying without demanding an immediate explanation. It may look like becoming more honest about what you want and more careful about what you accept. Rejection has a way of revealing the difference between a desire and an identity. You may desire the position, but you are not the position. You may desire the relationship, but you are not the relationship. You may desire recognition, but your life is larger than the response of the people who withheld it. The hidden work preserves what cannot yet be exposed safely. A tender root needs protection before it can bear weight. Likewise, a new confidence may need to grow away from the voices that trained you to doubt yourself. Do not despise the slow work because it has not become impressive. The strength you develop in private can later keep you from using public opportunity to repair private insecurity. Formation is not punishment. It is preparation for a different way of standing. The soil also contains resistance. There are hard places, stones, dry stretches, and layers that do not yield quickly. In your life, these may be old memories, repeated disappointments, financial pressures, strained relationships, or habits of self-protection that formed after being rejected. You do not need to call every obstacle a spiritual attack, and you do not need to interpret difficulty as proof that you are failing. Some resistance simply reveals where patient work is required. A route that meets a hard place may need to adjust its direction rather than abandon its life. You may need to revise a plan, seek wise counsel, change an environment, or admit that the path you imagined is not the only path available. What matters is that resistance does not get to decide your identity. The closed place may shape your route, but it does not have authority to tell you that nothing is growing. Be careful with the voices that use your frustration as evidence against your future. They may sound like your own thoughts because you have heard them for so long, but a thought can be familiar and still be false. The hidden work continues even when the surface gives no report. Then something shifts. The seed that once seemed sealed begins to open, not through violence against itself, but through the completion of an inner process. In you, movement may begin with a sentence you finally believe, a room you finally leave, a task you finally begin, or a decision you no longer postpone. You do not become fearless. You become less willing to let fear determine the direction of your life. The pressure that once made you collapse begins teaching you how to rise with care. A new shoot does not emerge by pretending the soil was never dark. It carries the evidence of darkness in its strength. Your rejection may remain part of your story without remaining the center of it. You can remember what happened and still refuse to worship its meaning. You can acknowledge that someone denied you access and still receive the truth that your life is not closed. Movement does not guarantee a particular outcome, but it does create a new relationship with responsibility. You begin asking, what can I faithfully do now, rather than, how can I make them regret what they did? That question changes the direction of your energy. You may recognize yourself in the movement because the desire to rise has returned more than once. It appeared after the tears, after the angry conversation, after the long silence, and after the day you decided to stop expecting an apology. It did not arrive as a demand to become someone else. It arrived as the quiet knowledge that you are still here and that being here carries responsibility. If the image of the seed speaks to what has been happening inside you, type the short phrase, "I am ready," in the comments, then return to the narration. Let it be a statement of willingness, not a claim that every outcome is guaranteed or every question has been answered. A seed does not see the whole field when it begins to open. It responds to the life it has been given and continues through the next layer. You can do the same. God may not be asking you to understand the entire road today. He may be asking you to stop calling yourself rejected when the deeper truth is that one place could not receive you. The title is not an invitation to pride. It is an invitation to responsibility, courage, and humble movement. When you return from the image to your own life, you can see the difference between rising and performing. Performance says you must appear untouched so that nobody can claim to have harmed you. Rising says you can acknowledge the wound and still refuse to let Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazara readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.